Well, I assembled all this information a few weeks ago, but I never got around to cutting it together. Here's my analysis of the most recent edition from John McIntyre, and he's calling this Flat Earth a Mountain of Evidence. Now, he claims to be a skeptic, but he's actually not, because if he were a skeptic, then this video never would have came out, and obviously the math would have been a lot better. So I'm just going to call it Flat Earth a pile of ignorance. In fact, the only piece of relative information that he put out in this entire video is actually the icon next to his username. Perhaps he ought to take up his own advice before making a 57-minute video whereby only about the last 7 minutes of it is worth anything. So I'm going to try and sum this up as quickly as I can. Basically, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, there are particular hilltops that he was concerned with, and that's Frying Pan Mountain, Graybeard Mountain, Pinnacle, and Bald Knob. According to what he wants you to see, he wants you to believe that if the Earth were curved, then here's where the peaks of those mountains should be. But mind you, he's not going to explain it at all. You can watch the video if you want to. I just don't recommend it, and I don't know why so many people have. He starts off with a nice little tour through Google Images, then gives you a wonderful little picture of the graveyard fields, which is nice. It's just a pretty picture, and the mountain that he's actually concerned with is way over here. Here's a mountaintop measuring. He probably only posted this because it says sea level and assumed curved surface of the Earth. But he does mention in there line of sight. In fact, many times throughout the entire video he mentions line of sight, but seems to forget about it in his conclusions. Then, of course, he used the Earth curve calculator, and then this wonderful slide about how to calculate the curve of the Earth. But honestly, if he knew how to use this at all, he wouldn't have to use the Earth curve calculator. Anyway, he outlined this neat little trick that he did in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and he seems to always want to point out Tennant Mountain, which you will find he is standing on at no time throughout the entire video. However, it does line up to a neat little spot that he seems to have drawn onto this map, and he tells this cute little story about how his wife didn't want to go bushwhacking through the woods to go down to the other place, and that's all nice and neat. But after exploring all the lines of sight to achieve the image he was talking about, I found out that his map was also wrong, and he was actually supposed to be a little bit more to the north. It's pretty incredible what a few meters can do to your line of sight. Then he tells you this cute little story of how he went bushwhacking through the woods, and he put blue masking tape on the trees so he could find his way back, and oops, he got an owie. Ultimately, to arrive to a point where he climbs a tree to take a picture. Then he broke out a website called Peak Finder, and he will use that for pretty much the remainder of the video. Peak Finder will also identify the 4 particular hilltops that he is using as his example video. Once again, that is Frying Pan Mountain, Graybeard Mountain, Pinnacle, and one that is not particularly labeled on this one is Bald Knob. Anyway, from up in his tree, he used an altimeter to say that he was 5,382 feet above sea level, which is 1,640 meters. There's a reason why I converted this to meters. Because if you go back to Peak Finder and you look up in the URL, it shows that his view is at 1,829 meters. And here's his hilltops versus his hilltops in the picture. Then he zooms out to another magnification, which shows also the same hilltops, and he's still at the same altitude of 1,829 meters. Then another minor adjustment that he does on the zoom level, and there's the hilltops, and once again the 1,829 meters. Then he starts zooming in on all the particular hilltops, which is pretty cool on this website, but it also gives wonderful distances, which we will go into later. And it also shows the hilltops, once again, from 1,829 meters. This was the camera position that he built up in that tree. Another neat little point of interest here, not that it was supposed to be particularly geometrically correct, it is slanted slightly downward on the left side, something he also identifies later in the video. But now, after 44 minutes, he finally gets into his subject matter. His subject has to do with, once again, these 4 hilltops. That's Frying Pan Mountain, Graybeard Mountain, Pinnacle, and Bald Knob. Then he breaks out Peak Finder again, once again, from atop Tennant Mountain, 1,829 meters. That's a difference of 189 meters, or let's say 620 feet higher than his observation point where he took the photo from. And you can see many times throughout his use of Peak Finder that the viewpoint is from Tennant Mountain, which he is nowhere near that height in his photos. Then he starts going into calculations on the Earth curve calculator, and he goes into wonderful stories about how different websites are all different elevations about all the different mountains, and strangely he also comes up with different distances. So his use of 36 miles in anything, he's claiming that that is the distance from his point of view to one of the mountains, is actually incorrect, because here are all the numbers you need to know, including the GPS locations, the elevations of each of the mountains, the distance from the observation point via Peak Finder, the miles, the distance also from Tennant Mountain to all the individual locations. None of those are 36 miles. And here's another point. This will just give you a hint on where he's going with his measurements. He's trying to claim that Frying Pan Mountain is 5,360 feet high. And at the same time, he's trying to say that there are 40 to 50 foot trees at the top of this hill, at the tower. Well, funny part is, this is a popular tower, and there's plenty of photos photos of it. And here's a photograph of it. Now you could see the stair landings. If there were 40 to 50 foot trees up here, you wouldn't see all of these stair landings. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't even see half of them. Nice try. But we finally get to our subject matter, these 4 peaks. Now once again, we'll go back to the map of where he said he was, including the lineup between Tennant Mountain and Frying Pan Mountain. All of his observations on Peak Finder were from Tennant Mountain, but he wasn't at Tennant Mountain. He says he was over here, but he wasn't actually over here either. He was actually here, as per Google Earth, Google Maps, and Bing. And here's what it looks like on Google Earth. The 4 lines that you see on there from left to right are to Bald Knob, Pinnacle, Graybeard Mountain, and the one that ends rather closely there is to Frying Pan Mountain. If you were to move it slightly to the right to where he claimed he was, then Pinnacle and Graybeard would be on either side of Frying Pan Mountain. But nevertheless, this is the view that I found from the location of his photo. Please note, I have it by GPS location. I have it at 1,638 meters, plus I gave him 5 meters for the tree, and you can see it pretty much matches up to the hilltop's line of sight and the perspective that he was looking from. So now that we've gotten to this point, every one of you should be happy that I just saved you almost 45 minutes of jabber. All of this can really be summed up with one point, line of sight, which, if you remember, he mentioned previously. Line of sight, in short, is a line of view from the observer to a target. If there's nothing between you and the target, your view will never be obstructed. Period. So as an example, if you and your target are higher than all the objects in between, there would never be a time when you cannot see the target. It's a very basic principle. Line of sight is also used in theater and stadium design for that very same reason. So to summarize this, if the Earth were flat, and sea level, where all of the elevations from this observation are based, and sea level were in fact a flat plane, then none of the 3 mountaintops would be lower than the peak of Frying Pan Mountain. Not a single one. Let's quickly go into the deceiving portion of this. Throughout his video, the photo in question, which he uses for most of his examples, is slanted 1 degree, counterclockwise, not clockwise, which puts the horizontal benchmark line for the peak of Frying Pan Mountain here instead of here. Now, how do I come to this determination? Well, it's very simple. There are 2 landmarks in this photo, one of them being the lookout tower on top of Frying Pan Mountain, and the other being an antenna mast also there in the area. Now, if you notice, both of them are leaning slightly to the right. So what you have to do is run a line up the center of each one of them, and then right angle that line out to find out where that horizontal benchmark actually is. This is the benchmark, not this. And as you can see, although Pinnacle is higher, as it should be because it is considerably higher than all the other locations, Graybeard is almost equal, and Bald Knob is lower than Frying Pan Mountain. This is impossible if everything was based on a flat plane. It violates line of sight if we were on a flat plane. So in short, it was a nice try. Oh, and for those of you who are claiming that, oh, he's just a skeptic, no, otherwise he wouldn't have titled his video, Flat Earth, A Mountain of Evidence. And to all you idiots below it, who commented, great job, and this is all awesome, and all this other crap. Either you wanted to buy it and you're just agreeing with it, or you bought it without actually doing the numbers yourself. Earth's a globe. This picture depicts curvature of the Earth a little more than half a degree, given the distances involved, from the observer to the furthest point. Y'all have a nice day.
Oh my God.